And the key to that is with Gary Gerald.
Yes, indeed. Paul Tracy down here in the front row. Al Unser Jr. is the story of the moment for the Penske team, however, in row number 2. And he is now going through the last-minute business of getting strapped in. He's going to step into the cockpit in just seconds. Junior, how do you play it today? You've got a chance to wrap up a championship. Do you play it conservative, or do you and your team go for still another victory in this amazing season?
Well, Gary, we're going to do everything that we've done to get us here and just go out there and do our best, and hopefully the Marlboro car will finish, and hopefully we'll wrap it up all at the same time.
Are there special emotions on this day, knowing what's at stake now and the chance that you have the luxury of getting it done early?
Well, it is a very special day for the whole Marlboro Team Penske to wrap this thing up, and that's what today's all about, is to get that number 1.
Well, we'll excitedly watch how this day progresses. We'll talk to you later on. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Al Unser Jr. ready to climb into the cockpit right now in row 2. Now, we mentioned one of his teammates, Paul Tracy, up front. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
That's right, Gary. Paul Tracy sits on the pole for the 3rd year in a row here at Elkhart Lake. We just spoke to Al Unser Jr., and we talked about that championship battle between your other 2 teammates. Now, does that enter into the equation for your strategy?
Well, I think I'm still battling to try to get second in the points, and we're going out there to win. And but most importantly, I want to get the race over as soon as I can, so I can get home to my wife. She's expecting a baby today, and I'd like to get home as soon as we can.
How aggressively do you go out with tires and so on? Can you run flat out for this distance here, or is it a pacing?
Well, it's a pace. Fuel mileage is an issue, but we ran a pretty quick pace last year with good fuel mileage. We got good fuel mileage right now, so it's it's definitely going to be a pacing game if we don't have any yellows.
Thank you, Paul. There are other stories here on the front row. Let's go back to Gary.
And right alongside on the front row next to Tracy, not more than 6 feet away, the sensational Canadian rookie. What a year he's had, Jacques Villeneuve. This is his best qualifying effort this year on a road circuit. It equals his best start of the season. As you can see, he's down in the cockpit being snugged away right now. This young man, in his first visit to this race facility, came here and tested a few weeks ago. They found a trick aerodynamic change that has given them sensational 200-mile-per-hour straightaway speed. Now, on the downside, when you reduce the drag to get the straightaway speed, the car sometimes has a tendency to be loose in the 14 turns of Elkhart Lake and Road America. We ask him now, how concerned are you about that? Jack kind of wrinkled his nose, got a crinkle in the eyes, and said, well, yeah, a little bit. He could be very, very exciting today, trying to protect a front row starting spot next to Tracy. Let's go back to Jan.
Adrian Fernandez starts on the outside of the 3rd row, one of his best starting positions of the year. But remember, he led the last race in Vancouver and then ran out of fuel because of a telemetry problem. It read in the car and in the pits that they had more fuel than they actually did. Now, here at Elkhart Lake, that would be really disastrous because with a 4-mile racetrack, there's only 1 lap these cars can pit on. That will be number 16. The Gallus crew is hoping that will not be a problem this time for Adrian Fernandez. Paul?
Well, Jan, I'm standing down on the pit road, and today this could be the center of the action. The straightaway just a few feet away where the drivers are at this moment buckling into their cockpits. The thing about Road America is it is gigantic, 4 miles around. Because of that, the strategy that the crews will use to get their drivers in and out of these pits are at a premium. You must stop on exactly the right lap. There's no pit window here. It is 1 lap, lap 16. Too early, and you'll have more stops in the race. You can't win with that. Too late, you'll run out of fuel on this race course. And if you do that, it's a very, very long tow back. And how does that figure overall into the day? Well, as we have suggested to you, the season-long fight for the championship may come to an end. The IndyCar Championship is down to 2 men, Unser and Fittipaldi. All year they have raced as a team, but not today. Al Unser Jr. is the solid points leader. The championship is his to lose. 5th or better will give Al his 2nd IndyCar crown. It's been a dream year for Junior. In addition to his wins and 4 poles, he's led 672 laps, or 38% of the entire season. But here at Road America, the crew is just as key as the driver. Even Penske perfection is subject to the whim of fate. A win can be lost in a second. For Fittipaldi, the task is tougher. Emo must score a podium finish. But this year, consistency has been his trademark. His car has completed 1,632 laps, more than any machine. At age 47, the fire to win still burns fiercely as he tries to become IndyCar's oldest champion. His crew has been together for 5 years to Al's 1 and given him nearly half of his wins. But even the best team can't protect their driver from the ghosts that lurk or confrontations like last week with champions ready to end the day. One thing is certain. Roger Penske will take home his first IndyCar championship since 1988. The question is, whose name will be on the PPG Cup? Fittipaldi or Unser? Well, we're back here on the pit road with the new dad, Derek Daly. Beth had her baby.
Yes, and Mom and baby Colin are doing fine.
All right, where are the pictures? No pictures?
No pickies yet.
Oh, Derek. Well, you know, one thing about this racing season is we have had some tragedies. Safety is always a concern, especially in the Indy cars, and they learn from accidents like we've had this year.
And there's no doubt, Paul, we've had a bad year in racing, particularly some of the high-profile racing championships. And remember, racing will never be immune to big crashes. They'll always happen. But the interesting thing is, some of the most spectacular crashes that's happened to Scott Sharp in New Hampshire are often the best type of crashes to have, because as the car rolls down the racetrack, it actually dissipates the energy rather than actually send it through the car into the driver's cockpit. And earlier, Jan Beek had a chance to look closer at Scott Sharp's car.
This is the very car that Scott Sharp had upside down in New Hampshire, and there's a couple of IndyCar rules that made a big difference as to his safety. First of all, the construction of the rollover hoop. It must be made underneath here. Although this looks nice and pretty and aerodynamic, it's made of steel tubing that has to withstand at least 1,500 pounds of the car, and then, of course, the impact associated with the crash. Now, the second rule is that a driver's helmet must be at least 5 inches below this for protection. This is the device that IndyCar uses to check that. Now, let's say a driver slouches in the cockpit and passes tech inspection. Well, they have another trick, and that is that Dick Perry, the technical director, he actually taped this piece of paper onto the wall of the racetrack. These are 1 inch apart. So then they took photographs of the cars, analyzed the photographs to be sure that every driver's helmet was at least 5 inches below. Now, the chassis also has special regulations. It must be at least 3/4 of an inch thick from the back of the seat up to the front bulkhead. Now, when we talk about bulkhead, what do we mean? It is the sturdy part of the chassis where the actual pickup points or mounting points of the suspension are located. There is another bulkhead back in this area of the chassis where the driver's pedals are affixed. Now, what's important about a bulkhead? Well, there's no bulkhead forward of here. That now makes this a crushable structure. In other words, if you hit something head on, it would crush to here, then become very sturdy, still a lot of protection for a driver's feet. The third bulkhead is located here by the instrument panel, and there is also a special regulation that they check using this device. This makes sure that it's tall enough that a driver can pull his knees back in case of a frontal impact.
The real key in all of that is that deformable structure. You were involved in a crushing accident at Michigan.
Unfortunately, I had one of those bone-crushing crashes 11 years ago now at Michigan, and as you can see from the pictures of the car just totally disintegrated, leaving the driver completely exposed. Now, IndyCar don't have all the answers to everything, but something they do is they examine in great detail all of these big crashes, and they try and learn something. And I believe over the last 11 years, what they've learned has actually evolved into what may be the safest single-seater racing car in the world today, because of the crust structure in front of the driver's feet, the full-length side pods that absorb huge amounts of energy that doesn't go to the driver, and of course the cockpit. The driver sits low, he's got high sides which can deflect wheels or suspension or any flying debris before it gets into the driver to do some damage.
And they also emphasize safety in the rules. Remember I told you about the reckless endangerment rule they established at Loudon? They emphasized that and used it last week, fining Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti $10,000 each because of reckless endangerment, number of impacts on the race course. That was re-emphasized at the drivers' meeting this morning. You keep going, and we're going to get you a lot bigger fines than that. Now, though, we're ready for some action and ready for the start of the engines.
Gentlemen, engines. Thank you, Pierce. Pierce Treadwell. The engine.
Alan Spencer Jr. waiting an extra 10-15 seconds before he fired his engine. He gives a thumbs up. His crew chief is Richard Buck. You watch your man get ready now to roll away, and we'll step toward the side of the racetrack. What's the attitude of this crew that's had such an amazing season? How concerned are you today?
Got a bit of butterflies, must be honest with you right now. It's an important day for us, but we got fuel mileage and brakes. Brakes are a problem here as well that we got to contend with today. So main thing is just to bring it home. Our guys are just doing the same thing that we've been doing all year. We just want to bring it home, and hopefully we can bring it home for us.
It's been a storybook season for this team. They admit to some apprehension. We wish you well this day.
Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Richard Buck on his way to get back and take a look at his driver, still waiting for the command to roll. They warm the engines. The pace cars begin to move in a moment, and we'll, of course, be back for 200 miles of open-wheel, high-speed excitement here on this demanding circuit at Road America.
The cars are rolling. We're back at the Texaco Havoline 200. Here's the way they line up on the pole. It's Paul Tracy, the defending champion, has started on the pole in every race he's run at Elkhart Lake. Alongside, a half a second back, is Jacques Villeneuve, as he did at Phoenix. Jacques starts from the outside of the front row. In row 2, it's Nigel Mansell, the fastest Lola qualifier. And Al Unser Jr. looking for his record 9th win. In row 3, it's Robbie Gordon, who equaled his career best with a second-place finish last week in Vancouver. And Adrian Fernandez. He was leading last week at Vancouver when he ran out of fuel. In row 4, it's Mario Andretti. He's a 3-time winner in 11 starts here. And Mark Smith, his best starting position this season. In row 5, Emerson Fittipaldi. All 3 of his wins have come here in even years, 86, 88, and 92. And Raul Boisel, 4th last year. It's his best finish here. In row 6, it's Eddie Cheever and Dominic Dofton. Row 7 is Scott Sharp and Scott Goodyear. In the 8th row, it's Teo Fabi and Bobby Rahal. Row 9 is Ari Luyendyk and Mike Groff. And the 10th row is Stefan Johansson and Michael Andretti. In row 11, Christian Danner and Jimmy Vasser. The 12th row, Claude Bourbonnais and Willie T. Ribbs. In row 13, Mauricio Gugelmin and Alessandro Zampedri. Hiro Matsushita is inside row 14, Giovanni Lavaggi to the outside. Marco Greco on the inside of row 15. Ross Bentley was scheduled to start to the outside, but they found a cracked bell housing this morning, and instead, Frank Freon will start in the 30th position. So now they circulate, ready to begin the pace laps. We'll be back for the start at Road America. Back at Road America, the Texaco Havoline 200 as the PPG pace cars take the field around, beginning the pace lap. Let's go pit side. Gary Gerald.
News and notes time before the green flag, Paul. Things falling in place now for next year. An announcement by Ari Luyendyk. He will be back with Indy Regency Racing, Sal Candela, and that team in 1995. At the same time, Stefan Johansson has renewed for 2 more years with Tony Bettenhausen. Alumax will also be their sponsor the next 2 years. They'll use 94 Penske chassis, 95 Gilmore power. That's great news for Tony B's team. More news and notes. Let's check with Jan.
Gary, as we alluded to in Vancouver, the Rahal Hogan team had an announcement this week, and that is that they're going to run the Lola chassis with the Ilmore power plant in 1995. Now, the bad news is that Mike Groff's services will no longer be needed by this team. Now, a driver whose services will be needed is Scott Pruitt. He has signed a deal with Pat Patrick, who's coming back to IndyCar racing, remember, with the Firestone tires to try and go after the Goodyear dominance.
Taking a look at the onboard cameras that will cover this gigantic 14-turn, 4-mile, actually a tick over 4-mile course here today. The nose cam on Bobby Rahal's, onboard Michael Andretti, outboard of his wing, the right side of the side plate of the rear wing. There's Stefan Johansson's car. We really expect a lot from him, and so Johansson, not Fernandez. We have plenty of onboard cameras here for you today, including this outside the back of Fernandez's car. And in morning practice this morning, we were seeing contrails coming off of the back of this car. And then also on Nigel Mansell, we will have this left side mounted camera. So plenty of variety to expose this massive course here. This is the carousel leading off into an area that they call the gravel pit. And you will notice that there's a lot of sand to slow the cars down should they come off the outside there, but that can also stop them for a long time. The race today is 50 laps, race record at 126.205 miles an hour. That was set in 91 by Michael Andretti. Fuel window isn't really a window. It's stop on 16. You don't, you've got a very, very big problem here. The weather's nice and clear overhead. There is what the track looks like. The nice thing about it is there's plenty of room around it for the spectators, but it's very challenging to a driver.
Not a driver here today who doesn't think this is the finest road racing circuit in America. $250,000 was spent over the winter time to build the gravel traps and new safety barriers that we may see later on in the afternoon. But to a man, this is the road circuit they like to come to during the season.
This section of the course, Canada Corner. It's one of the things I like about this track is that they name so many of the sections of the course because that is the closest corner to Canada. Now they begin to move into formation. Jacques Villeneuve there with a lot on his mind, starting on the outside of the front row. He did it back at Phoenix.
All the Canadian headlines in the newspapers this weekend were about these two people here, countrymen in battle today. Let's hope they make it safely down to the Canada corner.
Bob Marcus in the Chicago Tribune today said that Teo Fabi is going to be part of a new team with Jerry Forsyth and his group. They come up the hill as Paul Tracy gets a bit of a lead coming up. We're watching for a flag, and they give him the green flag despite the alignment of the front row.
Well, he pulled one over Jacques Villeneuve, but look at this here.
As Villeneuve comes to the outside, tries to sweep in, and coming to the inside too, Al Unser Jr. moves out then in and drops into the position. Paul Tracy leads off now the third corner of the track. Villeneuve there, and then as one car comes way off, but gets back on safely. Whoa, that's the stuff you got to watch for. That was Dominic Dobson, who said just before we came on the air, came by our position in the pits and said, say something good about me. Dominic, I hope we can. We are continuing to watch at the front of this field. As Al Unser Jr. closes in, Paul Tracy leads it. They're sandwiching Jacques Villeneuve. He's trying to do everything he can to close. Then Robbie Gordon.
Third gear corner here at the top of the hill. Two cars side by side, Fabi and Goodyear. Now they run down the hurry downs. Slowest corner on the racetrack here. Second gear, turn in, then blast through the carousel. Al Jr. looks at the back of Villeneuve.
And, of course, the key to the championship. We'll be talking about this the entire afternoon. As if he would remain right there, Al Unser Jr. will leave this day with his second Indy championship. Down through the kink, that little turn to the right, into Thunder Valley.
Incredibly, Paul, 200 miles an hour between the trees here on the run to Canada corner we saw in practice and qualifying.
Now Al Unser Jr. definitely closing on Villeneuve and putting himself in attack position.
Another gravel trap we saw there on the exit of Canada corner. Gordon looks good, and the two Newman Haas cars run together, Mansell and Mario.
Nigel leading Mario as the rest of the field strings their way through now single file. And we head for the end of the first lap of competition. Here are the Indy cars, Road America. Al Unser Jr. still trying to set up Jacques. Now, he's had incredible straightaway speeds throughout the entire weekend, but some people think that he's running the car very loose to be able to accomplish those speeds.
And that's exactly what he does. He will make his car fast down the straights, but it's a compromise, so you're slower in the corners. You slip and slide a little bit too much. But Tracy definitely has the compromise hit on the head at the moment. But remember, Goodyear have brought the softest tires again that they've ever run here at Road America, and there are questions about the longevity of the tires during a full run with 40 gallons of fuel.
One car already in trouble here on the course. That's the car of Claude Bourbonnais being reported off track. As we watch them, there is Claude Bourbonnais' car. He's pulled it off to a position of safety. And the IndyCar safety team is there. Michael Andretti has had a rather spectacular run. He started well back in the field, already moved up to 14th, started 20th.
Good shot of Michael. See that right rear tire there. Of course, Goodyear introducing all these new tires because very much a development time now. You learn so much on race weekends. Look at that car ahead of Michael, slips and slides under power. But Goodyear, remember, learning because the onslaught of Firestone will happen next year, and you never learn as much as you do on race weekend, which is what Goodyear are gathering all their information for right now.
Michael Andretti battling with Ari Luyendyk. The battle is for 14th position. Michael had a car that was not handling well for him, didn't have any mechanical traction at all throughout the weekend. They made some major changes overnight. Morris Nunn working with that car and working with Michael, and they had great expectations for the day. Part of them have been realized.
So difficult as we watch over Michael's shoulder. He is a very aggressive driver. If the car does not point to the apex, as we just saw him come through there, Michael has difficulty settling down. He likes to point, get to the apex, jump on as much power as he can, and hope the car sticks. In a situation like he has this weekend, I'm afraid the combination of Mo Nunn and Julian Robertson, who are the two engineers that work with Michael, has not come up with the sweet spot that a Michael needs here at Road America.
Paul Tracy continues to lead the second lap, just coming to conclusion. This is the third year in a row that Paul Tracy has led the opening lap here in the Texaco Havoline 200. We'll be back. Well, he had his chance at running in this race, but Frank Freon already is off the side of the course, apparently a mechanical failure. He replaced Ross Bentley when they withdrew the car as a result of a cracked bell housing. Now on board with Bobby Rahal. He runs in 18th place. That's Scott Goodyear just up ahead, and not far ahead of that you'll find Michael Andretti. Down the hill now. This is that area that Derek referred to earlier. Very, very quick in through here. They tend now to go downhill into a woods where the trees block any crosswinds.
This is the braking area down to turn 5. Just listen. Down 4 gears, 6th all the way to 2nd. Driver very busy. This is a balance. Here and balance it. Here's a kink. Racetrack. We'll see Goodyear make 2 of those corrections as he turned to the apex. So Goodyear's car looks loose. Watch him feather it here. Now the blast. Here's a kink. Get brave here, boy. Oh, comes out of the power. That's where Fernandez crashed last year. Big dust cloud there.
Take a look at Raul Boisel as he tries to carve his way up through the field. Just tried to make a move on Teo Fabi. Fabi dropped back. Boisel trying to get himself into a position to move on Dobson, sitting just ahead of him.
Look at Michael and Ari.
Michael doing everything he can. Comes inside of Ari Leyendijk as they climb the hill. Almost touch Wills as they come over the start-finish line. Now during the first corner. Braking going to be the key on this maneuver.
Oh, Mike.
They got Boisel just ahead. He won't be a blocking factor, but Michael drops to the inside and gets Ari Leyendijk.
And there's not a braver man that you like to have inside you when you get to a braking zone other than Michael Andretti. You almost have to concede because you know he won't.
So Michael Andretti now runs in 15th position. Ari Leyendijk just behind him now. Down the hill, let's go on board with Michael Andretti and take a look at the telemetry from this car from Ford Electronics. This is our heads-up display. And quite graciously, the Ganassi organization giving us everything, including boost.
Listen and watch. 13.3 on the run. 57 miles an hour, slowest corner on the racetrack. Here, play with the throttle. Now watching through the kink. Backs off. See, he drops the boost when he feathers the throttle. With speed on the right hook. 199 miles an hour, and the fuel tank is still almost full.
And slams it down into the 60 range. Boy, that's part of what you have to be concerned with here today because of the heavy use of the brakes suddenly, and then they run long open areas like these straightaways where they cool and then slam back down on the brakes. We've had some discs suffer damage as a result of that.
Use them, abuse them, and hope they last. That's the only way you can do it.
Nigel Mansell in a battle for 4th with Robbie Gordon. Gordon just ahead. There he is. Caught a hint of the contrails. It's still very humid here. And the key to that... rear wing of Mansell's car, also off of Gordon's now as they head down the hill to really the key passing area on this track. Turn 5, station 5.
Everybody behaving themselves. Paul, you mentioned it earlier. The drivers' meeting today I happened to attend. Andrew Craig got up and he gave a statement about driver conduct and what he will not accept in future. And he said in no uncertain terms with a tone of voice that you just are silent and listen, that if anybody misbehaves in future, the $10,000 fines that we saw levied at the last race will increase. It will not be tolerated. Everybody listened and took note.
And while the battle for Mansell with Mansell and Gordon continue, just ahead of them another fight. It's Al Unser Jr. And Jock has been able to hold him off, but boy, look how much of the course he's using to do it. They've had some problems with drivers getting off the edge and cutting tires down this weekend. So every time he nicks the edge, he's taking quite a risk.
That is one of the problems here. The circuit is so long. There's the gap, second to third. The circuit is so long that you're tempted to use curbing, a lot of gravel, a lot of stones, and that is what's actually cutting these tires. They've had a lot of punctures this weekend, but not from cars that stay on the racetrack.
Of course, next year, Goodyear loses its monopoly here in the Indy cars. Firestone will be joining the fight. And so there are very soft compounds in use now as Goodyear gets prepared for the future. And Gary Gerald, that's had an effect on how they've approached the track this weekend.
Indeed it has, Paul. There have been instances of tires blistering on the inside in the practice and qualifying sessions. And so Goodyear has gone team to team consulting with the different tire men. And the result is a lot of teams are shaving a narrow strip off the inside of the tire. The purpose is to get rid of the rubber. It helps dissipate the heat that builds up. Now, one of the things that happens, you run so much negative camber, the angle of the front wheels here at Road America, it has an impact on how the tires respond. And for perhaps an explanation on why there's so much negative camber used on this race circuit, let's check in further on pit road with Jan.
Gary, first of all, this is what one of those blisters looks like. You can see that this has become too hot, and actually the rubber has come away from the edge of the tire. You mentioned negative camber. Negative camber is when you tilt the inside or lean the top of the tire in to give more bite by running on that inside edge. Why do they do that here? Because they take all the downforce out so they can fly down the straightaway like we're seeing on the in-car cameras, but then they need grip in the corners. The only way to do it is, or at least one of the tricks for some teams, is to put that negative camber. But unfortunately, it burns up the tires.
Jimmy Vasser into the pits. Obviously, this is very early, and there is a report of contact on that car, though we see nothing obvious at the moment. Vasser is, though, out of the car and apparently out of competition.
Now, just to cap the story about the tires, the teams had a choice. They could take the negative camber out and pump the tires up, or else they could shave the inside. No team wanted to make changes to the setup of the car. That was why the decision was made by Goodyear to accommodate them and shave that inside edge. When there's less rubber, there's less heat. When there's less heat, there's less chance of blisters.
Nigel Mansell, as he's bringing his IndyCar career to an end in his chase of Robbie Gordon for fourth place. Gordon still looking for his first IndyCar victory. Mansell looking for his first this year.
You can see the dust there, where again we mentioned earlier, you just stick a wheel off the outside, it seems to suck the dust off the curbing and off the outside of the racetrack. Now the cars behind them are the ones that are in trouble for possible punctures because of dust and debris on the racetrack. Boy, Mansell is closing on.
Boy, he took a major close under braking there. Robbie pulls away a bit, coming up to the top of the hill and making the left. But we'll continue to track this battle as well. In the meantime, Gary Gerald, why is Jimmy Vasser out?
Well, that's what we're about to find out. Jimmy, we had a report that there was contact. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I just got hit in the back going into one of the corners. It was bottleneck, and there, the guys in front of me were two abreast, and I just got hit in the right rear, and the car was pretty ill handling after that, and must have bent the toe real bad, and we just can't continue out there. We can't make up any spots, and the car's just real ill handling, so we decided to call it a day.
Here's a team that really needs some good luck. The second half of the season has been tough. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, Gary.
Very competent driver, and a lot of rumors surrounding Jimmy and the team for next year and what they may be doing. 43 laps to go. We're approaching the halfway point to the very first pit stop, and of course that is critical. Adrian Fernandez chasing Mario Andretti. Mario of course, coming to the end of his IndyCar and racing career. Well, IndyCar career. I don't think he's completely closed the door on other possibilities for next year, but those announcements have also not yet been made. And, of course, in a week, he goes to his hometown, Nazareth, Pennsylvania. We'll have coverage there as he drives on the last oval of his career in the Indy cars. On board, Adrian Fernandez now. Michael and Mario Andretti just ahead. Paul Tracy continues to lead. He's pulled out 7 seconds on second place. Jacques Villeneuve, Al Unser Jr. is in a championship position right now. Michael Andretti is in trouble. We mentioned a number of drivers were having tire troubles when they got off the edge of the track. Look at the right rear on Michael's car. He's got to try to make it almost half the course. He makes the turn that will take him up the hill and into the pit area. But Michael Andretti, who was in 15th position, now finds himself heading to the pits very early, and that will mess up the entire game plan for the rest of the day.
2 races in a row. Look what happens. He locks that left front because it lies down on the back. But here we get a look at it. Remember, this is 200 miles an hour we saw earlier, and there it blows. Halfway down the straight, something happens. Michael realizes what it is, and Lyondike luckily misses it and pulls away.
Let's go to Gary.
He had been so frustrated having to start 20th. He'd been driving the wheels off it. Now he stalls. They made the tire change. It came off the jacks. Starter comes back over the wall. Also, a piece of bodywork being torn off on the right rear. Oh, man. He is hot as he gets out of here.
And he's going to have to be real careful to make sure he doesn't break the speed limit as he gets out of there.
Almost identical to Vancouver. Puncture right rear, breaks the bodywork, they rip it off and send him back to battle. He was absolutely spectacular when he got back to battle at Vancouver, but I'm not convinced that he has the car under him today that allows him to be as aggressive or as effective as he was at Vancouver.
You heard a loud clunk as he came up to speed there. I think he suddenly realized what he was doing and got the control in so that he doesn't exceed the speed limit. If he got it in early enough. Jan Vikas, you have an update on this stop?
Well, you were talking about when Michael Andretti was leaving the pit lane, you could hear some strange noises. One of those noises you heard was the speed control that we talked about last race in Vancouver. He had his finger on the button on the steering wheel, and that is a reveler that makes the engine run very rough until he releases it. He is not able then to go over 80 miles an hour.
Well, Michael Andretti remains on the leader's lap owing to the 4-mile distance of a single lap here, but fell back to 25th position as a result of that right rear going down on him. And also, let's not forget, there is some damage, though it should be minimal in terms of handling, to the right rear of the car. It's just one of the scoops and spoilers that curls the air over the right rear.
And there's the carousel. When they go wide, that's where you get some debris, stones, things that will cut those rear tires. But if you had an outside tire blow through that kink, or that kink that it just came through, you could be in all sorts of trouble.
A lot of energy being carried by the car at that point, and if you lose any steering, you're going to be into the side barrier very quickly. Canada corner here, quick corner to the right as we come back up. Take a look at Nigel Mansell continuing to work on Robbie Gordon. Let's get an update. Eddie Cheever headed into the pits, driving for A.J. Foyt today. Jan, what was his problem?
Well, it turns out, Paul, that he is stranded somewhere out on the course because of an engine problem. We checked in with A.J. Foyt's Copenhagen team. I believe it's out by the carousel. So an engine gone for Cheever. His day is over.
We saw him running slowly, wondered if he was going to have a chance to get it back into the pits, but if the engine's gone, no need to make that long trip.
And happy to tell you the driver that he's filling in for, Brian Herta, is here this weekend without any medical devices on his pelvis and anxiously awaiting a return to the cockpit, which he thinks may be as soon as Laguna Seca, the last race of the season.
We're lucky we'll get a chance to talk to him later. He's going up and down the back of the pits. Spent about a half an hour with him yesterday here in the broadcast booth, and he's lost a little weight, but he's still got that sparkle in his eyes, and he is really anxious to get back. We watch this battle here. Herta, remember, was injured, had 2 fractures of his pelvis, damage to some internal organs, and a fractured femur. That's the upper leg as a result of a practice accident in A.J. Foyt's car at Toronto. Slammed the right side of the car heavily into the wall.
And moved to Indianapolis to do his recuperation under the direction of Terry Trammell. He still lives there. He said, I will stay here as long as necessary to get me race fit, because that is my priority.
And Gary Gerald's found Brian Herta.
Well, indeed we have. Brian, it's so good to see you back at a racetrack, and I know it's got to be exciting for you. A lot of people are wondering, though, what's the time for being able to get back in a race car, because I know it's number one on your agenda.
Absolutely. You know, it's great to be out. This is the first time I've been to the track since the accident. I've seen a lot of good friends and really helped keep my spirits up here. But timetable looks great. Doctors told me if all keeps going the way it is, that they'll even let me race Laguna Seca this year. So try and get that one in, but for sure we'll be back and racing next year all season.
We look forward to it. Thanks, Brian.
All right, thank you.
Nigel Mansell, the Kmart car, just made a good move on Robbie Gordon, but it wasn't stout enough. He wasn't able to get past, but I think he's got Robbie Gordon worried now.
Oh, this is a great fight here. Mansell in pursuit. Gordon fourth, Mansell fifth. Under braking, he seems to close up just a little bit. But what a pressure to withstand for a Robbie Gordon, the world champion, Formula One, IndyCar champion, right behind you, looking for your position. But Gordon gets better and better all the time and is not phased that much in race situations, although we did see him make a mistake at Vancouver. Boy, he was wide there, going through the apex.
Exactly. Interesting speeds on the last lap, too. Mansell faster as they turned that last lap speed. Mansell a master at not only waiting till the last minute to brake, but perhaps not even braking sometimes at all. And when he does, he'll trail that brake all the way through the corner. I don't think there's anybody out there that's better at it.
Off the racetrack with the outside wheels. Bounces over the curbs. Just listen. Second gear. Then the drag race. Mansell may be in the most developed of the Lolas, being the factory car. Probably 30% of the aerodynamic changes on this car done by their own team. The front suspension that you see there, all new, all Newman has. Gordon probably has a more standard or stock Lola. And as you can see, that's not a bad package either.
Well, all of the updates the Lola makes throughout the year, they build a new piece, and then it's not really ready for everybody right away, so it takes a while for a new part to trickle down.
That's right, that's from Lola. But Carl Haas independently has his own mechanical and aerodynamic development going on that is just for his team.
But that might mean that Robbie Gordon has all of those kind of updates. But look at Nigel Mansell. That's where he closed before, coming through the carousel, the gravel pit, and on the way into the Canada corner could be a key for Nigel this time around. They come up to peak speed, and that right-hander lies just ahead. They'll come down into the 60-mile-an-hour range. Robbie Gordon was able to pull away during the acceleration phase, and Nigel was not able to catch him. Interesting names have won here in the Indy cars. In 82, Hector Rabaki. 85, Jacques Villeneuve. Not the one here today, the uncle. Right after the Indy cars, coming up next, the PGA Tour continues as the top golfers compete for a share of the $1.8 million purse as ESPN brings you live the final round of coverage of the Bell Canadian Open. Nigel Mansell continues to do everything he can to worry Robbie Gordon, but there has been a report from the pits that there may be a problem with Nigel Mansell, Gary Gerald.
Yeah, there's consternation down here. There's been a lot of huddling going on around the telemetry units. Mansell has radioed the crew that he believes there's a misfire in the engine, but they haven't been able to substantiate that through the telemetry. It's nothing that shows this needs to be attended to or that needs to be fixed. So all he can do is ride. They plan to be in here in a couple of laps, lap 16 for a pit stop. Penske team will be in on lap 16, and they're going to try to push Tracy to lap 17, which frankly surprises me. Now let's go up to the other end and check in with Jan.
Gary, I can give you three very quick updates. First of all, Scott Goodyear came in early in his Budweiser car and made an 8.5-second stop, a different fuel strategy. Also on the course, Mark Smith is stopped, and he has radioed in saying he believes it's a broken throttle cable. Thirdly, we are down here checking, and it does appear as though Robbie Gordon may have gear selection problems with second gear.
Too bad for Mark Smith. As you saw, he had an excellent starting position and was running 10th when he had that problem. Is the problem with Nigel is, look, he tries it under braking again. He's going to get it done this time as he comes around Robbie Gordon in the carousel now. Well, if there's a problem in that engine, it didn't show there. I was about to ask you, Derek, was possibly what Nigel's worried about was that little hesitation under acceleration.
I don't know what the problem was, but Gordon braked too late, missed the turn-in point, locked up the left front, and Mansell, you never give a man like Mansell another opportunity. Watch Gordon's left front. Smokes it right there, misses the turn-in point. You never give Mansell a second opportunity. slams his way by, and that's it. All the work now pays off. Gordon makes a mistake.
And so Nigel Mansell and the Kmart Havoline Lola now runs in 4th place. And in fact, in a very few minutes, Robbie Gordon will have to deal with Mario Andretti, who runs in 6th place, running as Nigel's teammate. Nigel flashes across the line. The 15th lap complete now for the leader of the race, Paul Tracy. And Paul Tracy should be due into the pits. We're watching crew from Newman Haas and the crew for as Robbie Gordon slows down suddenly as he comes past the start-finish line.
Well, maybe this has something to do with the problem we saw him have under braking. If it was a gear selection problem, that could send him past the apex on your turning point, because remember, you use the engine as well as the brakes to slow the car down.
If you remember, I said at starting too, the one place that you don't want to have a problem here is right at the start of a lap. He's got 4 miles now, whatever the problem was. Michael Andretti, same problem.
How can Michael pick up all these punctures on the right rear tire? He had to take a shortcut because 4 miles is way too long. It would destroy the suspension and the bodywork. Look what he does to our camera lens. That is rubber breaking off the tire. See it down on the right-hand side. It just flaps and weaves. If he had to do 4 miles, the tire would come off. Then he could damage the suspension, probably not even make it back.
Michael is in just ahead of him. Both of the Newman Haas cars are scheduled for a stop now. In fact, most of the teams have now laid out, anticipating their cars to come in on this lap. There goes the first indication as Jacques Villeneuve heads into the pit area, climbing the hill in 2nd place. And right behind him is Al Unser Jr. We'll track all of these for you as they come in to make their stops here at the gigantic Road America. And Jacques Villeneuve heads for Jan Beekes.
Jacques Villeneuve is coming in. We have checked with Barry Green. They do not expect to make any stops. So far, he has stopped right on the marks. We're expecting a very standard 4-tire change and to take absolutely all the fuel that they can. So far, everything, they clean his visor. They're waiting for the fuel. Jack's waiting for the command. And, it's not in gear. He can't find a gear. Jacques Villeneuve lost all kinds of time. Let's check in with Gary.
Al Unser Jr. got serviced and is out in 13.6 seconds. His teammate Emerson Fittipaldi now being handled by Rick Reineman and the crew. They've been so reliable, so dependable all year. He is ready to come off. They're making a change on the left front wing. Down 1 turn, it appeared. Tracy will be in on the next lap.
So Emerson Fittipaldi comes into the pit in 7th place. Al Unser Jr. moves up to 3rd place as a result of that stop. The other thing that we suggested, the crews here are so critical with a mistake by Jacques and with the performance by the Penske organization and Richard Buck, they got him a place. Let's go back to Jan.
Well, we've had an opportunity to look at the tires that just came off Jacques Villeneuve's car. There you can see it. A huge blister on the, it looked like it was the left rear of Jacques Villeneuve's car. Man, this is really going to send shivers up and down with these teams. They're going to be very, very careful with these tires. That may be what's happening to Michael Andretti, gentlemen. Remember, they're both driving Reynards.
Yeah, but Jan Beekes, here's the question. He did make it to the 16th lap on those tires. So as we watch Paul Tracy come into the pits, we'll talk to you in a second. Jan, first let's go to Gary Gerald as the leader makes his stop 1 lap later than scheduled.
The fuel economy has been surprisingly good in this first stop. He got 17 laps, 4 more miles than his other competitors. Everything looking routine as we watch. John Buzlag out in front, the crew chief here for Paul Tracy, hurls the cable back over the hose from the air gun, waiting for the fueling to be complete. Waiting. Oh, this is not quick. 17 seconds. He's out of here. It was smooth, but it took a long time to get all that fuel, Paul.
Yeah, but the reality is I'm not so sure that it needs to be quick. He developed a tremendous margin, and here he comes back onto the track, easily the leader of the race. And that, though, the big change is obviously going to be that Al Unser Jr. flashes by in 2nd place, and Villeneuve drops down into 3rd position now. Mansell 4th, Fernandez 5th.
And the hard work that Jacques Villeneuve and Barry Green's team put in to get him up to 2nd place all goes away with a very simple mistake. He's in the pit lane and he forgets to put it into gear. That's all the big boys need to pounce and take that position away from you.
Let's go pit side again. Robbie Gordon is in, out of the car, and with Jan Beekes.
Robbie, we had reports that you were having gear selection problems. Is that what put you out?
Yeah, we broke second gear about lap 10, and we were just trying to hold on to see if we could run longer and try to gather some points up. You know, I got to give credit to the Havoline guys. They worked really hard all week. We weren't very close when we got here, and we had a pretty good race car.
Well, what's going on with the gearbox? Because you had that same problem in Vancouver. That's why you couldn't close on Al Jr. Is there a problem that keeps coming up for a reason all of a sudden at the end of the season?
I don't understand what the problem is there. This time, it's definitely something different than last time because I know it broke second gear right in half.
A very disappointed Robbie Gordon. Paul?
I'll tell you what, though, when he wins, look out. I know I've said that before, but definitely look out. Well, after this first set of stops, and by the way, both of the Ray Hall Hogan cars made their stop on the 16th lap as well, so that completes the stops for everybody. Paul Tracy is the leader of the race, never relinquished it by being able to carry on to the 17th lap, one lap further than his teammates as he made his stop. But Al Unser Jr. at the moment is in second, and that's a championship for him. At the Texaco Havoline 200, I'm Paul Page. We're riding with Bobby Rahal. That's Dominic Dobson in 9th place, just ahead of Rahal. Let's give you the order now. Lap 18, here's your top positions as a result of the pit stops. And, of course, the key change is there in second place. Al Unser Jr. only needs to be up in the top 4 or 5 positions if he wants to come home with a championship. He's maintained that status throughout the race. If he can stay there the remainder of the day, then we'll celebrate a new IndyCar champion at the end of the day. Let's go pit side, Jan Beekes.
Well, another Walker Motorsports member that's here on pit road is Mark Smith. Mark, what put you out?
It turned out that it was timing chain that broke. At first, it felt like it was the throttle cable. Just lost drive. It wasn't violent. It just exiting turn 3. After I'd shifted up to 4th gear, it just let go.
Now, you qualified 8th. You were running great here. Obviously, this is a disappointment, but why are you so fast here? You love this place?
I don't know. I just kind of got a knack for high-speed road circuits, I think. And car was working really good, and just found a good balance, and that's what it's all about here.
Well, a great start, but an early end for Mark Smith. Paul?
On board with Adrian Fernandez. Now, by the way, they've assessed a stop-and-go penalty to Raul Boisel. He ran over Arie Luyendijk's air hose as he made his pit stop, and that's a violation as well, mandated stop-and-go penalty. So let's watch Adrian, who runs right now in 6th place, and take a look at the Delco Electronics telemetry on this car. Down through Hurry Downs, heading for that left-hander that turns into the carousel.
And it was a Ford engine of Michael Andretti's that we looked over the last time down this long back straight. This is an Ilmore, so we may get to see what his straight line speed is. This is the carousel. Balance the throttle. Now the blast down the back straight. Through the kink. He's in top gear, and here we go. Fastest part of the racetrack. Well, 188 is the highest we see here. Quite a bit slower than we saw from Michael Andretti's Reynard earlier.
Adrian Fernandez led his first IndyCar race last week at Vancouver, and then ran out of fuel. What a terrible disappointment. But when we talk about those drivers up and coming and those who, when they win, should be exceedingly powerful, put his name on that list. Willie T. Ribbs, the third of the Walker Motorsports cars, pulls off the edge of the course, and Willie T. climbs out. Cars right at the edge of the track, right by the underpass. I don't think the corner worker is real happy with that positioning either.
One of Willie's guests here this weekend, Jimmy Jam Harris, who's the producer for Janet Jackson, taking in a motorsports weekend with Willie T.
Willie going to be a backup singer now, do you think?
I sure hope not, because he's terrible.
Let's go pit side. Gary Gerald can give us several updates.
Well, let's start with Nigel Mansell. They're now having, because of this misfire in the engine, they're having some fuel economy problems. So that's an added concern for the Newman Haas team with the defending PPG IndyCar World Champion. Also, Paul, we heard the report from Jan about a blister off one of Villeneuve's tires. Al Unser's tires came off, and there was a good-sized chunk missing on one of the rear tires. We talked with one of the Goodyear engineers, asked him, is that from surface buildup? He said, frankly, he did not think so, but of course they couldn't give us much more than that. We talked with Richard Buck, and he said Junior had reported that the car had been
the rear wing of
the possibility possibility that in one of those loose conditions, he may have slid it sideways, build up the heat. That may have caused that blister. But frankly, they don't know, and they're concerned about it. Jan?
Gary, when you talk about that blister and people are scratching their heads, I just checked with Tony Cicali. He says he doesn't think it's a blister. What he thinks it is it's the cars that are sliding. They go across those chatter bumps on the exits of the corners, and that may be what's actually tearing up the tires.
That's interesting, and I'll buy that from Tony Cicali. He's pretty observant on that stuff.
Tony Cicali, of course, engineer to Jacques Villeneuve, came out of retirement because of this young man's talent. And he may be right. They may be just literally tearing chunks out of these tires. Now, something you mentioned, Al Unser Jr.'s tire. I'll guarantee you, Jr. has already been in radio contact with Roger Penske about the condition of his tires. And if he needs to take care of them, Jr. is as good as anybody out there.
We're watching a battle within the team Pac West organization, and Dominic Dobson, the 17 car in front there, runs in 9th place. His teammate, Scott Sharp, just behind him. Only battle on the circuit at the moment. Let me give you the rundown at the top of the order as we keep an eye. Ray Hall closing in 2. It's Tracy, Unser Jr., Villeneuve, top 3. Then Nigel Mansell. Mario Andretti is in 5th place. Good run for Mario. Adrian Fernandez is 6th, then Fittipaldi, then Teo Fabi, and then this battle, Dominic Dobson and his teammate, Scott Sharp. Now, if the race would end now, we know it won't, but if it would, this is the way the points fight will look, and there is no question that Al Unser Jr. is the championship. What is still open for contest is 2nd place, and everybody down through Robbie Gordon would still have a shot at moving up in the fight. So while the championship could be decided today, there's still plenty of points fight to be had.
And there's another fight to be had here, to be continued between these teammates. They haven't run like this very often during the season, but they are teammates, probably without team orders. Dobson and Scott Sharp. Sharp totally unfazed by that spectacular crash that he had at New Hampshire. Everybody else held their breath, and all he did was talk on the radio to his crew, but unfazed.
Down on the lower elevation side of the course. Too bad that there aren't grandstands in this section of the course, because a lot of good action occurs here. But nice thing about Road America, especially if you're a camper, is you can get up on the hills above this and look down on this section way below you. It's really a picturesque circuit. This track was originally a pure road course around Elkhart Lake, which is about 3 miles from here. And some of the turns here were made to replicate the turns in the original circuit. So at the front of the field, it is Paul Tracy, 7.5 seconds ahead of his teammate, Al Unser Jr. And Al Unser Jr. continues to be in the championship spot. Back at the Texaco Havoline 200 Road America at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, a 4-mile, 14-turn road course, 200 miles of scheduled distance here. Paul Tracy was on the pole, picked up the lead, and has led ever since then, including through his pit stop, because tactically they were able to hold his stop off 1 lap further. He's getting, for the top position that he's running, amazing fuel economy. His fastest lap thus far has been at 132.1 miles an hour. He's averaging 128 miles an hour now, which is 2 miles an hour faster than the record set by Michael Andretti in 1991. The bright yellow Pennzoil car is, of course, Teo Fabi. He runs in 8th place, and just behind him, that battle continues on between Dominic Dobson and Scott Sharp for 9th place.
And I don't know what would happen here if Scott Sharp poked his nose down the inside. Remember, Dobson's not only the driver here, he is also part team owner of this team. Pac West, one of the new teams, run very well by John Anderson, engineered by Alan Mertens. Of course, you remember his name with the Gallus team.
I'm going to say, Gary or Jan one suggested that there are no team orders here, but when that boss is in front of you, there might be, he might just hold his hand up and say, just stay where we are, I'm doing very well here.
I don't think so. I just don't think so. When you have young drivers like this out to try and make a name for themselves, remember their careers are in their own hands when you're in a position to gain a position on the racetrack.
Moving back in the field now to the 13th position, on board with Stefan Johansson, who you, at the start of the program, we indicated they've made an announcement now that he is going to be with Tony Bentonhausen and his racing organization for another 2 years, as will Alumex, their sponsor. So that's going to put them in a very comfortable position to make some decisions over the next years. Part of those decisions are they're staying essentially with this program of Penske chassis and Ilmor-powered cars.
On this Alumex team, if ever a team deserves some results, I think in fairness, Bettenhausen Motorsports with Johansson probably deserve more than what they have had this year. Johansson has been so fast on so many occasions, but hasn't quite managed to put it together.
Take a look at this. Emerson Fittipaldi is finally, he gets tired of sitting behind Adrian Fernandez, closes on that long straight going into corner 5, climbs the hill now, one position further forward. He is in 6th place now and set sights on Mario Andretti.
Well, talk about trying to force the issue. We have not seen Emerson run that fast all weekend here, has not been happy with his Penske, but that was a force the issue type of pass, under braking to turn 5. Now watch Fernandez, he begins to come across, look at this, wheel to wheel, and he sees him and just about gives Emerson enough room.
But plenty of room. It only was an extra inch or so for Fittipaldi to get past. Let's discuss for a minute, Derek, the strategy, the tactics that will be played now in Penske racing. If Emerson is to keep any hope at all alive in the championship fight, he must have a podium finish, while Al Unser Jr. has to be beyond 5th place. So what will they do now? Do they want to at least get him up into a position so if Little Al has a problem, they're going to have him close to the podium? Or wouldn't you just ride in there? What would you do?
They can't make a decision on what might happen. They can only make decisions on what definitely does happen. What has happened so far is Al Jr.'s ahead. That has already made the decision. If he begins to have trouble, then they may be forced to rethink things. But Penske right now will be happy to let his drivers decide the outcome of the championship.
Paul Tracy has just crossed the 100-mile mark. There's Alessandro Zampedri out of the car and walking back after a problem here with the MyJack car that may cause us to see a full course yellow. And in fact, we're going to see a full course yellow here on the 25th lap. Paul Tracy, by leading those first 25, picks up the extra point. And as a result of that, Al Unser Jr.'s magic position is now 6th or better to wrap up a championship today. We're back at Road America, Elkhart, Lake, Wisconsin, under a full course yellow. They still appear to be moving at speed, and in fact are in many places, as they close up behind the PPG pace car driven by Johnny Rutherford here. Paul Tracy is still the leader of the race. Al Unser Jr., though, came into the pits and changed tires. A bit of a surprise to most of us. Also, the Newman-Haas cars came in. Were you surprised, Eric?
I was surprised about Al Jr. Now, we're going to try and follow the story to see, was it a tire checking stop that he wanted to play safe with? But Tracy has not come in. Now, remember, Al Jr. made an early stop at Vancouver, and it absolutely fell into his hands, so perhaps he's mindful of that.
Well, let's talk to his crew chief, Richard Buck. Gary Gerald has him right now. Maybe we can find out what the thinking is.
Richard, what's the strategy here? Why, after just 10 laps, do you bring him in for this change?
Well, the car was a bit loose on him, and as you saw before, we were pretty hard on the rear tires. We're actually kind of driving their wheels off it, so to speak. But it was virtually like a free pit stop there. We got him in, got the fuel in it now, and that opens our window up real big for the end of the race. When the other guys are going to have to take on a full fuel load, we can go with a partial load and have a quick in and out, and be able to pick up some good positions in.
So it definitely becomes a 3-stop race, but you're happy with the way this is shaking out?
Yeah, it definitely opens our window up, and we got a lot more options towards the end of the race.
Okay, there you hear it from Richard Buck. He and Roger Penske, although he did tell us just before we did the interview, that was Roger's call all the way. Jan?
Gary, when Richard Buck said it was a free pit stop, that's the exact same thing that Newman-Haas had to say. They said, hey, we can get in and out, get fresh tires, get it filled up with fuel, and we probably won't lose track position because there was enough distance between us and the next car. So they're viewing it exactly the same way that Penske called it.
And as we suggested at starting, those crews there can make the critical difference in a victory here.
And what he means by a free pit stop, the leader Tracy still has to stop. Villeneuve still has to stop. So all the leading cars still have to make one more stop. That's what they mean by that free pit stop.
So we continue under a full course yellow, the first of the day for Alessandro Zampedri, who pulled off with a broken gearbox. Wednesday night, Army marches into Durham, North Carolina to take on superstar running back Robert Baldwin and his Duke Blue Devils as college football is continuing on here on ESPN. We're at the Texaco Havoline 200 at Road America, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. 27 of the scheduled laps are into the record book. 50 are scheduled. Paul Tracy is the leader of the race. But now we've begun to see some interesting strategy being played here. Paul Tracy, Jacques Villeneuve has not made a stop. Al Unser Jr. just made one. And that opened up his options, really, at the end of the race.
So here's the key now. Tracy, we know didn't stop, and Villeneuve will make full stops the next time. Unser Jr. will make a time stop. So as this race unfolds here, it may depend on what happens in the pit lane as to what the final outcome may be.
Nigel Mansell, who currently runs sixth, also jumped into the pits at the same time and stopped, as did Gary Gerald, Adrian Fernandez.
Yeah, Adrian came in. We just checked with Rick Gallis, and he says, well, we have a simple rule of thumb here with our team. Anytime you're more than half a tank empty, you get an opportunity on a yellow to come in, you come in. So that was routine. There was no other reason for it. But now he joins Al Unser Jr., Nigel Mansell. They'll have to make a third stop before this race is over, depending, of course, on how much yellow there is. We expect that stop will come probably with about 7 laps to go in the competition.
And we expect that the yellow will end at the conclusion of this caution lap. Jim Squintal has the green flag available. He picked up the passing flag there for a second. He's ready to go. Matter of fact, by the way, he came to me, as did several of the other officials, and said the corner station at Mid-Ohio reported once again that they did not have a waving yellow going with that whole situation surrounding Robbie Gordon and Paul Tracy, and Paul Tracy being black flagged there, and they were concerned about the report we gave. Certainly video indicated something was waving, but maybe it was just the flag coming up. We wanted to acknowledge that they were concerned about it, and shows you, for a volunteer organization, how professional they really are and how concerned they are about their conduct at an individual event. So here we're ready to go back to the green flag as Paul Tracy accepts the green, climbs the hill, and flashes across the start-finish line. Once again, he got a very good climb up the hill well in advance of any of the competition. Now Villeneuve comes out in second place and starts to chase him. Al Unser back in third because he did go into the pits and make that stop.
So Villeneuve, we saw from the runs earlier, is not in a position to challenge Tracy on sheer speed unless they've changed the car in the last stop. Tracy has the measure of him, but Al Jr. now tries to pass Matt Schuster.
Very, very careful when you move on this car. Some drivers have been concerned about it this year because they say that sometimes he doesn't seem aware of you, and that seemed to be one of those occasions.
Al Jr. safely around and chasing Villeneuve. If you don't get it done on the racetrack, you may rely on the Richard Bucks of this world to help you make the pass. Al Jr. is well mindful of that. Remember, championship is all he thinks about. Another $1 million he'll get if he wins the championship. That is of prime importance today as opposed to a race win.
Let's get a further update on the second place car. Here's Jan.
We had an opportunity to check in with Barry Green. Of course, he is the team owner for Jacques Villeneuve. It turns out that they lost position last time during the pit stop. This time they decided not to pit, to pick up position, and now they feel that this yellow has given them a bigger fuel window. They can turn it up, use all the fuel they want, but now they know for them it comes down to that final stop.
There is a team that is developing their skills at making those stops and certainly has the experience within the organization. It is the Forsyth Green Group. Barry Green sitting on top of that team and keeping track of the car and what they will do tactically with the race. So you can't really count on them making any mistakes. You're going to have to race him on the course.
Barry Green also says one of Villeneuve's strongest points is he has an uncanny knack of managing fuel. He is very easy on fuel, which is a tremendous feat when you have a race as long as this and as hard on fuel as this.
You mentioned the presence earlier as we continue to watch this car of Tony Sicali, who is prime skill as an aerodynamicist on this team. And you will notice both in the wing and in the stabilizer fin, it is slightly different. There is a separation within that stabilizer fin and an element not in that wing that is on the other Renards.
There is ongoing development with this car. This is one of the teams that understands if you can engineer or develop a so-called unfair advantage, it makes your driver's job so much easier. But what a job this team has done this year. Barry Green, in fact, wants to expand this to a two-car team next year. He will split from Forsyth, the Forsyth Green name we've come familiar with. Barry will go his own way, but does want to try and expand it to a two-car team.
And as we did suggest, the Chicago Tribune this morning reporting that Teo Fabi will hook up with the other part of that split, which is with Forsyth. Of course, Teo had some of his great runs with the Forsyth organization, and then Barry Green as the chief mechanic of the team.
You saw the heavy braking there for Canada Corner. One of the problems Villeneuve has had this weekend is a soft brake pedal. He had to pump it with his left foot before he jumps on it with his right foot. He said one of the things he worried about was forgetting in the heat of the battle to pump that brake and maybe get himself into trouble. Obviously, it hasn't happened so far.
I'm trying to keep a good eye on that fin, and I don't think they're running the fin with a separation here today. So they're counting on the aerodynamic changes strictly to the rear wing on this car. That means that they run the car very loose, as you saw there. But this young man seems to handle that condition with no problem at all. It would fatigue most drivers.
That's right. Things that development, mechanical items on this car, brakes. They have their own new braking system, unlike other Reynard cars. Villeneuve liked it, so they held on to it as we move back and pick up Mario having a good day.
We go back to the battle. Mario Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi, a fight for fourth. Mario's there now. And Fittipaldi comes down under braking again. Station 5. There he goes.
Demonstrating again that Penske under braking in particular is very, very stable. And a driver that has confidence to duck down the inside and take the line is what's being demonstrated here by Fittipaldi. Nice, comfortable feel for a driver to have in the braking zone.
So Fittipaldi now one position closer to that podium finish. Let's go to the pits again and Gary Gerald.
John Buzlaug is the crew chief for Paul Tracy, and you got that big smile going. And I ask, are you getting better fuel economy than maybe you had imagined under race conditions?
Yeah, we are. We're getting good mileage. A lot better than we imagined, but we just hope to stretch out a little bit of a lead. And, you know, when you do that, you can sort of use that as a buffer, you know, short shift and not worry about racing a guy behind you, you know, when you got a good lead like this. We'll see what happens. Al, you saw, came in a little early, so he's probably going to short fill at the end.
Whoa, we got a car off.
We're going back. We got a car off. Thank John.
Like this is down in that section where Fernandez got in trouble last year. And I want to be real careful on the identification of the car. I would have been wrong. Ari Leyendyke. I was looking at that red rollover bar and thought for a moment it might be Dobson, but it is Ari Leyendyke. And he's sitting out in the center of the course where normally the cars would pass. And you can see the course marshals here apprehensive about that positioning. But as cars now start to come through like Marco Greco, they get the cars way down under speed. And I would guess that this will create a full course caution. Here it is, Derek.
Whoa, did you see Christian Danner just make it round the outside on the grass and missed Ari Leyendyke?
We'll go back this one up and take a look at that. That was an incredible drive by Danner.
This is the kink. If you back it up.
And Johansson and Rahal
right up now.
and Fernandez.
Now, before this contact here, Leyendyke has hit something because the left rear has already gone down. Now watch the avoiding action by Christian Danner in particular. That's the AL Motorsport car. Look at this. Now remember, he's probably doing 175 miles an hour when he takes to the grass and manages to keep that car on the racetrack. But it does cause a full course yellow because it will take quite some time to clean up that debris.
Normally, I ask you as a driver, as a Formula One driver and an IndyCar driver, what these drivers feel like when they do something like that. But I got a few thousand miles on this course in a Formula Ford. Took my first driver's school here. And I got to tell you, when you go off here, that's like going off on ice. That's what Danner had to feel.
And people say, what do you think about when you see an accident happening in front of you? Believe me, in a situation like this, If you have to think, it's already too late. You react instinctively. Look at our leader, Paul Tracy, who takes to the dirt also to go around the outside, and Tracy is in and Gary is there.
All Penske cars will come in. So with the strategy that we've just been talking about with John Buzlak now becomes totally different because Unser has come in. Fittipaldi is in the process of hitting his box. Tracy off the blocks and out. Oh, boy, was he out of here.
Wow. And of course, doing this under the full course yellow for Arie Luyendyk's stop. And boy, we've got in trouble with Jacques Villeneuve again. Remember, he came off his last stop. He couldn't get the thing going. Jan, he had the same problem again.
Well, this time it was not that he didn't get it in gear. This time it was that he got it in gear and then stalled it. And the Forsyth Green crew had to then push him and get him going. We have had an opportunity to check with the crew, and Paul, they believe that Jacques Villeneuve will be able to make it to the end of the race from this point.
Taking a look at the Johansson car now as he makes his pit stop. Derek, my guess would be with 18 laps to go, everyone here is figuring still under the full course yellow, they're going to make it to the finish of the race.
18 is a little bit of a risk, particularly if you go at racing speed. Remember, they stopped on lap 16 or 17 at the start of the pits. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Well, we've just got word an IndyCar official came running up, is talking with Clive Howell, Rick Mears, John Buzlak. There may be a possibility of a black flag violation against Paul Tracy, possibly passing his teammate here on pit road. Now, he was the race leader. I don't know how that could have happened. We're just told that. Consultation continues. It could be huge if, in fact, that's the case. Now we get a thumbs up. Apparently, they've resolved the situation.
What way have they resolved it, Gary? That they will not black flag him, do you think? Is that the resolution?
Well, that's what I'm assuming. I'm going to try to reach in here and get a word. Did they resolve this, John?
Yeah, they did. They were thinking we were in violation passing in the pit lane, but as long as you don't exceed the speed limit in the pit lane and pass, you're okay, I guess.
Big scare, though.
Big scare. We want to win this race.
All right, there you hear it.
The pit lane speed limit starts at the very first pit and it ends at the last pit. So if you're at either end of it, you can use that at the racetrack also.
So under a full course caution as they get Arie Luyendyk's car off the course. Looks like it's going to take a little bit longer. We'll pause in the Texaco Havoline 200. ESPN's coverage of the Texaco Havoline 200 is being brought to you by the all-new Ford Mustang. It is what it was, and more. And by PPG, world leaders in automotive finishes. Christian Danner's car into the pits right now, the 64 car, and a rather lengthy stop. Josie Cordero there, Nancy Cordero, one of the crew members, legitimate, solid, over-the-wall change tires. She's been there. I noticed her at Mid-Ohio. I'll tell you what, she's doing a great job. Gary?
Well, she is the only woman that goes over the wall in the IndyCar ranks, and I talked to her for a while yesterday, and I'll tell you, Paul, there's a possibility who absolutely loves her job. Her dad was a boat racer out, I believe, in the Portland area on the West Coast. Her brother was also involved in motorsports competition. She said it was almost a natural thing for me to get involved. And you talk to Andreas Leberle and the people on that crew, and they say one of the hardest, most diligent working people on their crew. She was with Euro Motorsports last year, came to this team this year. She does a terrific job. They love her, and she's a great hard worker.
She picks up her wrench as casually as can be.
And wherever her family are, they're jumping up and down looking at the television right now.
Christian Danner, of course, had a very, very close call when Arie Luyendyk got in trouble there, went by on the left-hand side using the grass the whole way. Let's take a look at the schedule next year while we're still under this full course yellow and what should come back to a real sprint race. We'll start the season in Miami, Florida on the Biscayne Boulevard circuit down there, and then head off to Surfers Paradise, Australia in a race that they say is now in great shape to go on at least another 5 years without any problems, really building in its attendance and popularity. Phoenix, Arizona on the mile there, which always produces a terrific race, and then to the streets of Long Beach, California. Then Nazareth, Pennsylvania. We'll be there next week, but next year year will move up into the spring. Then, of course, the Indianapolis 500. The rest of the schedule for a while then, patterns pretty much like this year, but if you look at the dates, you can see it's going to be a very busy time. Milwaukee, Detroit, Portland, then Elkhart, Lake, Wisconsin. This race moves back into July. From here over to Toronto, Ontario, Canada at Exhibition Place, then right down to Cleveland, Ohio, and then the Michigan 500 at Brooklyn, Michigan. Over to Lexington, Ohio, onto the road course. Back up into New Hampshire at Loudon, New Hampshire on the mile there. Vancouver, British Columbia on the 3rd of September, and then down to finish the season on September 10th, 1995 at Laguna Seca in Monterey, California. Start making your travel plans now. I already got mine made. I'm going to be at all of them.
And that safety crew, thankfully, will be at all of them. They work so hard here on weekends. But when you're in trouble, to have a face from one of those safety crews come up to you, it is very reassuring. Now, when we go green here, Scott Sharp will have a black flag stop-and-go penalty for a pit speed violation. They caught him at 92 miles an hour when 80 is the limit.
Now, a couple of things to watch when they come back to the green flag. Besides the battle for the lead, we'll keep an eye on Emerson Fittipaldi. He sits there in 4th. If he can finish in 4th or better, he will eliminate Robbie Gordon in the fight for 2nd place in the points fight. But Emo cannot today eliminate Michael Andretti from a possible 2nd. At least one more full lap of caution here. Our 2nd full course yellow of the day. The record was 3 full course yellows in 1992. Well, still, Al Unser Jr. is in a position, 2nd place, that will earn him a championship today. But in that pit, they know that it isn't over until that checkered flag comes out. And Gary, I bet they're very nervous.
Well, she's been chewing on those fingernails, and I don't know if anybody's more nervous than Shelley Unser. Tell us what it's like now as you're getting ever so close to being able to clinch this championship dream in this amazing season.
Well, I just am a little nervous because of the way that we're lined up on the track right now, but I think I have all the confidence in Al, so we'll just hope for a good, clean race and get this over with.
A lot of people share the emotion with Shelley Unser right now. Thanks, Shelley. Paul?
Gary, a little bit of housekeeping. I mentioned that Scott Sharp got a stop-and-go penalty. In fact, it is his teammate, Dominic Dobson, who exceeded the speed limit at 92 when it should have been 80. So he will have a stop-and-go penalty. Now, I mentioned earlier, can they go all the way? Yes, they can now, because we now have only 16 racing laps left. Because of this yellow, there is enough fuel, I believe, in all these cars now to go flat out for the rest of the race.
All right, so lining up behind the PPG pace car, Paul Tracy, Al Unser Jr., Jacques Villeneuve for 2nd and 3rd, then Emerson Fittipaldi, then Mario Andretti in 5th. In 6th place will be Teo Fabi, Nigel Mansell, Adrian Fernandez, Stefan Johansson, and Raul Boisel round out the top 10. Going a little deeper for you, Scott Goodyear, then Bobby Rahal in 12th, his teammate Mike Groff in 13th position, then Mauricio Gugelmin, and Scott Sharp sits in 15th. As they head for the final turn on the course, already the pace car heads for the pit area, and they begin to pick up the pace. Paul Tracy has always gotten a good jump on the start here today, and for the 3rd time he screams up the hill, though this time Al Unser Jr. is wide to him and stays right with it.
And the pace car barely had time to get off the racetrack that time, but look at Villeneuve.
Whoa! Look at that, it's Villeneuve darts to the inside. Paul Tracy is almost knocked off the course. He is battling as Al Unser Jr. sits behind, takes it easy. They bang wheels not once but several times, and Jacques Villeneuve picks up the lead. They will battle down the hill now to the key passing area on the course. Paul Tracy has to be furious that he got jumped there.
Well, sheer talent and bravery pulls one over the Penske Super Team, and Villeneuve, we know his car is fast down the straight, but look at this, Tracy's under attack again.
Under attack, but Al Unser Jr. is right there, and take a look at Mario Andretti, who brings his way forward in the field. We expected a sprint to the end of the race. I'm not so sure I expected this. Here comes the rest of the field as they climb the hill and turn toward the Hurry Downs.
Well, what a turn up for the books here. Something we didn't expect. Villeneuve lost all those positions in the pit lane. First he couldn't get it into gear, then he stalled it. But look what happens here in the slingshot.
Villeneuve moved to the inside around Tracy. And look at that, as it looks like he got together, Tracy together with Al Unser Jr., and then they banged again as they came down here.
Now down here they actually do touch wheels on the run down the hill, but Villeneuve stayed in there and kept kicking and fighting all the way and keeps the lead. What a move.
Is there prophecy here? With Jacques now the leader of the race, remember his uncle scored his only victory here. We then called him Jacques Villeneuve, but look at this young Canadian who's now solidly in the front of the field, but Nigel Mansell back in the field has a problem, came off song there for a second, and looks like he's on a limp back to the pits.
Oh, Mansell running 7th and now slowly makes his way back. It's over now for Mansell, hasn't got a chance here. But this is where the action is. Villeneuve, Tracy, Al Jr. quite content just to sit back and watch.
And the 3 Penske cars now running 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. The report on Nigel Mansell is a flat left rear on the car as he comes into the Newman Haas pits, Gary.
Well, we watch alongside this crew. No evidence of the rears being down, but you can never tell. May have lost some pressure. He's off the jacks in a way, and they'll assess those tires now. And this has been a day full of frustration for Nigel Mansell.
Through one of the key passing zones again, and yet Paul Tracy is not able to move into position to take on Jacques Villeneuve.
Reynard have won 2 races this year on street circuits. Never won on a road course like this. What a turn up for the books it would be for the man who's already locked up the Rookie of the Year honors. But the pressure he's under now to have the super powerhouse behind him, waiting, forcing him into a mistake. We're going to watch his every move.
You'll get a glimpse from time to time of that bright yellow car of Teo Fabi, who runs in 5th now. And he is in tight contact with the leaders of this race. So it's still anybody's game here with 14 laps to go.
14 long laps to go. Over 4 miles. If he can settle down, Villeneuve could win this.
And the real question was, he's been running this car so loose all day. Did he have the stamina to continue to run it with the aerodynamics really pretty well flattened out to give him very strong straightaway speed? But the kind of toll is that going to be taking on him?
That's it. Uncharted territory here for this man. Under pressure. Hang on to that car. Do not make a mistake. If you do, those 2 men will pounce.
Nigel Mansell came back into the fight in 17th position, Gary Gerald.
Well, the interesting thing is the fact that they checked the tire pressure on all 4 of those that came off. None of them were deflated. So Nigel may have thought he had a puncture. In fact, it appears he did not.
So that stopped extremely costly for Nigel Mansell, who was running solidly in competition until he came in. 37 laps complete now. Let's get an update from Jan Vikas.
Well, when Jacques Villeneuve took the lead, their crew went absolutely crazy. And you say, well, why? Well, they had the opportunity to watch on a monitor to see our coverage. They can see it right here. They're all huddled around the monitor. Remember, with a 4-mile lap, you wouldn't see the cars very often if you didn't have one of those. They went absolutely crazy. It looked like they were at a hockey match, and they just scored the winning goal. One quick update, they feel they do not have to lean it down very much to make it to the end. They think they've got it right where they want it.
Well, of course, there is that possibility. He may have scored the winning goal with that particular move. Boy, what a brave move it was, though. I can't get over what a super move that was.
The power move of the race was what Villeneuve pulled off. I raced with his dad in Formula One. He was Mr. Excitement all the time. And this young man here seems to have inherited all those genes, the bravery, but he's born with the talent, and Barry Green surrounds him with the car. What a day, what a turn-up this could be if he can hang on. But let's remember, 13 very, very long laps to go.
Paul Tracy seemed to have this race totally under his control. Turned the fastest lap of the race at 132 miles an hour on the 8th lap. Dominated right from the start and through the first pit stop. But boy, that last restart, what a spectacular moment that was. And that gave Jacques Villeneuve the top position, and he seems to be able to hold on to it without any trouble at all. He's almost a full second ahead now, though a full second here doesn't mean much at all.
I wonder, did the pace car have something to do with that start? Because the Penske cars Here it is again. Now look at the brave move down the inside. Now here's Tracy, almost hits him. He might have hit him. And then the run down. Watch this. Wheel to wheel. Bang, they touch. And Villeneuve comes off best. He dives for the apex. But I wonder, I did ask the question, did the pace car, you think, have anything to do with this? Because remember, Tracy and Al Jr. could not accelerate early enough off that last corner to get up the hill because the pace car was still there. Villeneuve was a bit further behind. I don't know whether that gave him a slight advantage.
Well, and adding to that would be the fact that for a few seconds there, Al Unser Jr. was past Tracy as well, so there certainly could have been an accordion effect as they came up the hill. But for the moment, the end result is Jacques Villeneuve is running at the top of the field. His best finish on a road course was a 4th at Cleveland. He was 2nd, of course, at the Indy 500 a year ago. To go. Jacques Villeneuve is the leader of the race. Paul Tracy is a half a second back. It seems like he can watch him, but for the moment it doesn't seem like he can or is willing to try and catch him. Well, what does it got to feel like in the cockpit of that lead car?
One of the youngest men here. What a weight on his shoulders. Probably with about 10 laps to go, every newspaper in Canada will already have their headlines printed ready to go if this man can pull off the upset of the surprise here. But Tracy is close here.
Still, the issue is going to be whether or not the pace car figured into that as they climbed the hill.
I just threw out that question. It was a thought that seemed unusual to me. And if we get time, we may be able to get a comment at the end of the race from a Tracy or a Penske driver on that. But it doesn't really make any difference right now. There was no infraction. Villeneuve made the move. That's the key. He took advantage. Look at him now.
Well, there are only about 3 things that can really cause that kind of situation. Slow pace car coming up the hill, or at least a compression behind the pace car, falter in the engine, or a missed shift, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. Who cares which one?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter when you're in front.
Blair's car is leading.
All right, Mike Groff out of the race prematurely. Gary Gerald is there.
Well, we talked about frustration for a lot of folks, and Mike Groff, you've had your share this season. It's been tough finishing races. What was the problem today?
Well, it definitely has. I think we've finished 5 of these darn things this year, and it's been a tough year. But actually, I think what put us out was low oil pressure on the engine, and it's really unfortunate because I think Honda's really worked very hard to get to this point. We just really haven't had the luck with the engines, unfortunately. But I know they'll be back, and last 2 races we'll have the new version engine like Bobby, and the Motorola car will be up running strong last 2.
What about your plans now for the 1995 racing season?
Well, right now they're definitely a little up in the air, but I've had some good conversation with a couple teams, and it's all been pretty encouraging right now. And I'd say right now it's pretty early to say what's happening, but we're feeling good about the way things are going.
Well, we certainly hope it works out. You've done a super job in our estimation in trying to help this team along in a very tough season.
Thanks a lot, Gary. Appreciate it.
Paul?
Derek, unfortunately, standard answer number 3 there. He doesn't have a whole lot on the horizon at the moment.
And how things might have changed from Mike Groff if that Honda engine had been spectacular. Mike and Bobby Rahal may look like heroes right now as Gugelmin ends his day on the grass in the Hollywood Reynard.
Was running 14th. No indication from the course as to why he might be off the edge of the course. He is staying with the car, though he's propped his steering wheel up there like he might have wanted to get out for a moment. On board now, the Alumax car, Stefan Johansson. He's been trying to hold off Bobby Rahal for the past several laps. Rahal is just behind him, currently running in 10th place for Johansson. Delco Electronics telemetry there as they look at the gear changes.
And he is mindful that he will step into the 94 Penske next year. What a potent machine that is. He'll have the 95 engine spec and the 94 chassis, and he should be a front runner again for Tony Bettenhausen. Stefan Johansson, who will get married to the lovely Gabriella on October at the end of this season.
Stefan Johansson started 19th, now runs in 10th place.
Scott Goodyear right ahead of him. Third gear through the kink. Look at his gears. To 4.
Isn't that neat?
Back to 2nd. No, he keeps it in 3rd.
seen here with the sequential, the drivers gets a gear indication of what gear they're in on the dash, because it's not like the old H pattern.
Gear shift never moves position after you select a gear, so you sometimes may not know what gear you're in. Little digital readout, it reminds you on the dashboard.
41 laps complete, now 42 for the leader, Jacques Villeneuve. Less than 40 miles to go, actually right at about 32. Can he make it a win? Well, he currently runs in 6th place, but next week Mario Andretti is back to his hometown, Nazareth, Pennsylvania, for the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix. His final run on an oval as the Indy cars take to the final oval of the year. Right now it's a natural terrain road course, 4 miles long, 14 turns, Road America, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. As Paul Tracy suddenly starts to slow.
He's in trouble, Paul.
Something as he came up the straightaway there. Al Unser Jr. is right there on top of him. Paul Tracy is trying to keep it at speed, but there's some problem in that car. Was it temporal, or will it continue on?
No, he is in trouble. He went by our commentary booth here. There is a broken header or something misfiring in that engine. Al Jr., there he goes.
Well, Al Unser Jr. moves for the pass as they head down the long hill run into the 5th turn. And Al Unser Jr. moves into 2nd place as Paul Tracy takes it off of the race course. Whatever it was, he knew it was terminal. Gary, do they know that in the pits?
No, the crew does not know why. We checked with them, and they said, we don't know what it is. They knew there was a problem. They've watched the monitor. They've seen what you just reported, and now they go back to the other side of the wall, and they'll await the return of their man. Boy, it looked like, as you were saying just minutes ago, looked like he had this thing wrapped up.
Well, Paul Tracy shortcut the course and is now climbing the hill to the pit area, so we'll keep track of that, because at the lead there is no fight going on now. It's Al Unser Jr.'s race to try and take away from Jacques Villeneuve. As here comes Paul Tracy. He slows to a stop. He throws the wheel off and he's ready to climb out of the car right away. Whatever it was, he certainly knew what it was.
Well, he gets to take an earlier flight back to Canada than he anticipated. His wife, Tara, due to deliver today their 2nd child, so he would have liked to have stayed in competition for Villeneuve for a little bit longer, but Tracy's day, unfortunately, is over, because we may have had a doozy at the end.
What this does is gives this man a little bit of breathing room. He came across the line on the last lap about a 2nd and a 3rd ahead of Al Unser Jr. The 2 Penske cars now in pursuit. And you were right. As they came past, it sounded like a broken header, and that's exactly what they're reporting.
And Villeneuve will now look in his mirrors and see a different helmet color. He'll know Tracy's gone, so his job has just gotten a little bit easier. Now, I'm not sure Al Jr., if he gets close enough to Villeneuve, will take a risk and poke his nose down the inside, because Villeneuve will bang wheels with the best of them when he's going to fight for his first win.
I'll tell you what, you and I are a little different. I'm not so sure looking in my mirror and seeing Al Unser Jr. there is going to make me feel any better at all. Let's go to the pits once again in Jan Beekes.
When you guys are talking about Jacques Villeneuve, the man who talks to him on the radio is, of course, Barry Green, team owner. He asked him 2 laps ago, he says, Jacques, all we need is 8 perfect laps, and this is yours. And, of course, now Barry has told him that one of those persons chasing him is now out of the fight.
Oh, don't put pressure on the kid. 8 perfect laps, no problem. 14 turns here. Good news about this course is most of the turns are relatively classic. There's nothing that's really tricky and off cameras or anything.
And if you get your rhythm, suddenly you click off those laps. But it is nice to come by here and you'll see his pit board count the laps down. But it is not over yet.
Let's go up the pit road. Gary Gerald's with Paul Tracy.
I know it's a bitter pill to swallow 2 weeks in a row, and maybe this one, I don't know. It looked like you had everybody covered so well, Paul. Now, clarify, was it a header?
Well, I don't know what it is. You know, we had everybody covered pretty easily, and then on the restart, I started losing power, and, you know, Jacques just drove right by me, and, you know, it's just a shame to have a mechanical failure this late in the year. You know, we should have all this kind of stuff covered, but, you know, it's a shame. You know, we've just missed. We're not in 3rd. We could have been jumped into 3rd. We're trying to get Emerson in the championship. It's pretty much all but done now.
Was the mechanical failure the reason that Jacques was able to challenge so effectively on the restart?
Yeah, he was, the motor was just flat. It was, the valve started blowing and the motor went flat, and then, it just started losing more and more power, and he was just able to drive away on the straights.
Was there contact between you and Villeneuve?
Yeah, there was. He went on the inside, and I was trying to stay with him, and he went wide, and we touched wheels at the exit. But it was good race, and I hope he ends up winning the race, because following him, he's not putting a foot wrong. He's driving a good race.
I know you're also concerned about your wife, who's expecting your second child almost at any time.
Well, I think that'll be the joy for the day if it comes today. This is a bitter disappointment for myself and the team, and I'm very upset with what's happened.
Thank you, Paul.
Boy, for once I was right. I actually figured out that it could be something other than that pace car, a faltering engine, and he just confirmed me.
Possibly.
Chalk one in my column, first time in 4 years. Come on, give me a break.
Well, Villeneuve is clicking off those 8 perfect laps, but look at Al Jr. beginning to turn the heat up. He is getting closer to Villeneuve. Ford engine versus Ilmore, Reynard versus Penske.
In the last 8 years, only 3 teams have won here with 5 drivers: Penske, Newman, Haas, and Patrick. That could be about to change. Texaco Havoline 200, Road America, Elkhart, Lake, Wisconsin. Very busy sports weekend up here. The Packers are playing. Wisconsin played at home yesterday, and yet they still have a record crowd here today for the Indy cars. Now, Al Unser Jr., as you saw by the interval, has been closing in. But, Derek, is it a chance worth taking?
Oh, I don't know. The door will have to be left wide open by Villeneuve for an Al Jr. to stick his nose down the inside. Remember, he saw Tracy and Villeneuve bang wheels in that first corner, and it looks as if Villeneuve's car does have the legs on Al Jr. down the straight. But under braking, Al Jr. definitely seems to gather him up a little bit.
Something else to remember. Al Unser Jr. is right now in the position that would earn him the championship. If he tangles here and goes off course, that possibility is shot for him.
Who love,
above all, I always see Al Unser Jr. as a racer. If he sees a hole, he's going through it.
Right, and also remember this. Currently, he has tied the record that Michael Andretti set at 8 wins. He could set a new record by going for the win here.
So Al Unser Jr. with a chance to wrap up the championship here very early in the season with 2 races to go after this. Nazareth next week, we'll have coverage of that. And then, of course, on the 9th of October at Laguna Seca, California, what almost always turns into a free-for-all. And you'll see that coverage here on ESPN. Everybody watching the television now. Hey, Roger, give us a wave. No, he wouldn't do it. It was worth a try, though.
Have a look at the oil on the front of Al Unser Jr.'s helmet when we get a good close-up look. I wonder where's that coming from. Was that coming from Tracy's car? Because we know he is retired with a mechanical failure, but the front of Al Jr.'s car is normally white. And that is very definitely well covered in oil.
Oh, no. Mario Andretti, who was doing so well in 5th place, sits by the edge of the course. Fuel, maybe? Couldn't be.
Well, now that allows Fernandez to move up to that 5th place, and then Bozell, Scott Goodyear, Johansson, and Rahal all behind him, as Scott Sharp now moves up into the top 10.
So Mario's bad news is good news for a number of others. Michael Andretti out of the car. Race over. So let's go to the pits, get an update from Gary.
Radio says that Mario had plenty of fuel. The engine just cut out, Paul.
Oh, boy. Michael Andretti, no indication as to why he brought it in and out of the car. Remember, he had 2 tires go down on him, and those the treads of those tires could certainly have done a lot of damage to the car in those runs. But Michael Andretti, after starting 20th, still occupies 17th place, but is going down through the field. Again, another chance to pass, and he can't get it done for Al Unser Jr. Battle for the lead continues, now with 2 laps to go.
Junior can't just get close enough to Villeneuve. Villeneuve's car is set up so as it goes through the corner well, but accelerates off well, and it's fast down the straight. Now, under braking, right here, there's no room. Al Jr. doesn't have room to make an attacking move, and he's too far behind him. Here's the carousel. Watch how the gap closes in. Maybe only half a car width. But from here on in, let's follow them all the way down to Canada Corner. Villeneuve was the fastest man down this straight at over 200 miles an hour during practice and qualifying. He doesn't lose Al Jr., but Al Jr. can't get close enough.
Once again, an opportunity to pass missed for Al Unser Jr. By the way, we've got something very special for you. Next week in the run at Nazareth on ESPN, you're going to see coverage just like you are now. But those of you lucky enough to have ESPN2, well, there we will have primarily on-board coverage throughout the entire run. It's an experiment that sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. White flag comes out. Jacques Villeneuve on his way to victory. 2 key passing zones ahead. Will Al Unser Jr. try him? Al Unser Jr. may not. If he stays there, he has the championship anyway. But let's remember, little Al loves to race and loves most of all to win.
Great shots as they go away from our cameras. You can see both cars off the racetrack over those very dirty rumble strips. But Villeneuve hanging on. He may make history here. The Canadian newspapers may be full of this man tomorrow, but Junior is closer than ever.
2 incredible possibilities here, a championship and a first-time win for a very deserving young man and a team that has worked very hard all year. Another win in the column for the Reynards this year as well. Al Unser Jr. now really moving into where he has but one more chance, and that will come at Canada Corner.
And to satisfy Barry Green, he only has half a perfect lap to do. Look at Al Jr. He's further behind than he was before.
Al Unser Jr., maybe he's set in a position to try to get a little momentum as he runs down through the kink.
If he gets through the kink here, Villeneuve, without trouble, Al Jr. is too far behind. He is too far behind unless Villeneuve throws this thing into the bushes.
One critical corner, a lot of careful braking here as Jacques Villeneuve makes that turn. The race could be his. The championship looks like it's little Al's. They make the final set of turns. Coming up to turn 14. A championship and a first-time winner decided as Jacques Villeneuve becomes the 212th driver since 1909 to win an IndyCar race, and Al Unser Jr. takes the championship for Penske Racing. Al wins his second championship, his first coming in 1990. And the celebrations will begin at both ends of the pits. Villeneuve pulls off the edge of the race course. Apparently, he stretched the fuel right to the end. Unbelievable. Gary Gerald?
Well, we've got both microphones here. Come on in, Ned. The radio network is here. Roger, the emotion of a championship, the first since 1988.
Well, it's amazing. I'll tell you, these guys have just done an outstanding job on this team to bring these cars home. Al, what a great pick to get him on our team this year. I want to congratulate Emerson, obviously, and Paul had a rough break today, but Villeneuve drove a super race. But again, Al had to finish this race up to make this championship be a reality. But again, I take my hat off to our sponsors and everybody else.
So many things have happened. The new engine program, the success at Indianapolis under that pressure cooker of time, and then this steamroll through this season. Have you ever experienced anything quite like this?
Well, it's a point in time, as I've said to everyone. You know, we're on top today. It'll be somebody else tomorrow, but it's a fantastic feeling, and I'm just glad to be here. And I want to thank everybody who's been involved in this program, our sponsors, our folks in England, the engine shop, and just everyone for all the support they've given us.
We'll see you in Victory Lane.
Thanks a million. Thanks.
Yeah, there are a lot of folks back in England who have worked very hard for this championship. The good news for us is that we've got plenty of time. We're going to be able to savor the championship, savor this first-time win. The battle for second place will still continue. Look at this. The young man walks back all by himself, leaving his car by the edge of the race course. He isn't even going to have the pleasure of being able to drive into Victory Lane, but he is the winner nonetheless. First car this year to win without any red on the car. Jan Vikas knows how to get an exclusive.
Well, we had the opportunity to catch up with Jacques Villeneuve as he was walking back, waving to the crowd. Now Tony Sacali comes up and gives him the hug. Congratulations. This man, the smile on your face tells it all. Oh, yeah, nice job. As one of the Green brothers congratulates you. Fantastic job. What a great restart. How'd you pull that off?
Well, Paul started too early and got slowed down by the pace car, and then I had a great tow. And there was just a little bit of room to the inside, so I went for it, locked the wheels. Then I was hit from behind, and I just fought for it, and it worked. I want to thank the team because they did a great job, and
in the 2 pit stop, I made big mistakes. I didn't put it in first gear in the first one. I stole the second one, and they didn't let me down. They did a great job, and so we could win the race.
But tell everyone at home, what does it feel like to win an IndyCar race after just thinking about that your whole career? What's the emotion there?
Oh, it's great. Mostly when you got Junior in your mirrors for the 5-6 last laps and he's quicker than you. That was tough, but the car was going really well with full tanks and with little fuel as well, so the team just did a great job.
Well, we all enjoyed watching this young man really do a job of driving today. Hey, Gary, what do you got?
I tell you what, isn't it a great day when you can have 2 great victory celebrations? The emotion for young Jacques Villeneuve enjoying this victory, having to walk back, and here just outside Victory Lane on the front straightaway where they were running 200 miles an hour moments ago, Al Unser Jr. is now savoring. It's sinking in. The pressure's off. The championship is his. The helmet's off as well. The earplugs are out. Junior reaching around. They've already got, of course, the championship hats. There goes the first one on his head. Team Penske 1994 PPG IndyCar champion. Junior, here's Nigel Mansell to offer congratulations. The defending champion with an embrace for Al Unser Jr. and a big thumbs up. And as it begins to sink in now, what a marvelous, marvelous feeling you must be enjoying at this moment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's incredible. The whole team, the Marlboro team, Penske, did a great job. And, you know, what can I say? I owe everything to them. I mean, you know, we got out there and we just did our best and stayed out of trouble. And you know, it's the whole team Penske that really did it. And I thank them.
When you look back over this season now and you think back to the season opener in Australia, how big did you dare to dream at that time?
Well, you know, I knew that, you know, Penske Racing has set the standard since I first started driving. And, you know, Uncle Bobby and Dad both drove for him. They both won championships for him. And they said if you ever called to jump at it. And Roger called and so we jumped at it. And I didn't know it was going to be as big as it is, but, you know, it's awesome.
One highlight after another. Here's Emerson Fittipaldi now, the teammate. Emerson can't win the championship. He's still in the fight to finish second. When you look back, when you think about all these different races, I know Indianapolis was huge. Has that been the highlight thus far this year on the way to the championship?
It's been the highlight on the way to this. You know, the whole goal is for this right here, for the team to win. And, you know, all the guys, they talk to me off to the side, whatever. It's been a long time since Penske Racing had won, and that they really wanted to win that championship. And so this one's for the boys, no doubt about it.
And now there's the luxury of 2 races to go, and the pressure's off, and you can just go. It's like the old days when you go sprint car racing.
Yeah, it is. You know, we've been trying hard to, you know, we try hard to win this one, and we had a great strategy going, and we came off of that restart and had a good restart, but then, you know, going down into one, everything started getting a little too crowded for me, and Paul and both Jacques, they wanted to win very badly, and I didn't want to end up on the outside of turn 1, so, you know, I backed off early. They both got back in front of me, which then I looked in my mirror and there was no one going to hit me, so, you know, it's a shame that we had to do it that way, but, you know, we'll try to win all of them like we did, and you know, the team's a super team.
There's a giant trophy from Kears Pollock and PPG that awaits you. That'll be over in Victory Lane. Go savor the moment, Junior.
Well, thank you.
We've got plenty of good interviews and celebrations, so don't go away. Take a look at this with Fittipaldi standing right next to our new winner, Gary.
Jacques Villeneuve is enjoying this moment so much, he hasn't gone to the victory podium yet. He's out here savoring this. We offer our congratulations as well for this first victory, Jacques. I know Jan spoke with you a few moments ago. Emerson, this young man on a charge today. The big thing for you, however, as a third-place finisher, is the fact that you are now, I think, 37 points up on your closest challenger for second in the championship point chase.
Well, Gary, that's happy, you know, by finish well, but I want to congratulate Jacques. He did a beautiful job under pressure, no mistake. He won his first race, and you know, his father Gilles is going to be very proud up there. And you know, congratulate my teammates. He really deserves to be the champion this year. He's a great champion, and I'm very happy to work with you all.
Emerson is a great champion and a great spokesman as well. He knew Jacques' father very well, and they enjoy this moment down here in the front straightaway as we go to Jan.
Well, Teo Fabi has a 4th place finish, and that equals your best of the season now. You had some close moments with Mario Andretti. Tell us about that.
Well, Mario is very tough to go by. You know, every time you try to overtake him, it's a hard maneuver all the time. But we went side by side at the hairpin, and after the hairpin, I was able to pull away.
Now, the Tribune said this morning that you are going to go to the Forsyth team. Is that correct?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be with Pennzoil next year, and that's very sad because I think it's the greatest sponsor in IndyCar. But yeah, I will be doing Indy next year, and hopefully with a very good team.
Thank you, Teo.
Still more to do here. The awarding of the Cup to the champion, the PPG Cup. And we'll talk with some more members of Jacques' team as the coverage continues at Road America. As Al Unser Jr. takes an acknowledging lap for his championship, NFL Primetime returns for its 8th season tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with Chris Bourbon and Robin Roberts. They'll provide complete wrap-up of NFL action today. Well, aboard one of the PPG cars, those beautiful show cars, Al Unser Jr., who will have a big handful of PPG's money as he scores his second championship. And Roger Penske and Shelley on board acknowledging the cheers of a record crowd here at the Giant Road America circuit. He takes that move around the track. What a great day. Those two historic moments, Derek.
They really were, and you mentioned record crowd. It's been the norm at IndyCar racing this year to have record attendances, but what a combination Al Unser Jr. has been with Richard Buck and Roger Penske. Just a formidable combination.
Let's go now. Some other celebrations away from the Penske team. Here's Gary.
Barry Green, of course, is the key man on the Green Forsyth team and the nurturing of this young Canadian sensation, Jacques Villeneuve. And Barry, describe what it must feel like to see this sense of accomplishment, not only for a young rookie driver, but for a new team that's come in here and has had such a dramatic impact this year.
Well, I mean, it's a great feeling, Gary. You know, we started out strong. We had a little trouble right at the start of the season. And then we went on to Indianapolis, did very, very well there. Things were building, and all of a sudden we flattened out a bit. So the players' team needed a real lift, you know, and Jacques Villeneuve just gave it to us today. Just drove a great race, you know, under pressure. Al Jr. sitting right on his tail. I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of the boys. We had a little trouble in the pits, and we cut it very, very fine on the fuel. We were running out of fuel on the outlap, but we needed to give it everything the engine could take to beat Junior, and we did just that, and I'm super proud of him.
I know back very early in this season, you were very outspoken saying this young man reads a race car so very well in your various tests and practice sessions. Does he have an exceptional skill?
I believe it is. I believe he's the best I've worked with, and I've worked with a lot of great drivers, and he's just getting better and better. Every race he's getting better and better, and we're going to see a lot more of young Jack.
Congratulations, Barry.
Thanks, Gary. A lot of fun. Thank you.
All right.
Well, there's a very deserving guy, but he's so good at bringing new drivers along. Remember, he helped put Teo Fabi on a rookie pole at the Indy 500. So here is your order of finish. A brand new winner, a two-time champion, Emerson Fittipaldi, still very much in the fight for second place. He's going to have to hold off Michael Andretti to do it, though. Teo Fabi comes home in fourth. Spectacular finish there. Adrian Fernandez, the best finish of his career thus far. Scott Goodyear, Stefan Johansson, Bobby Ray Hall, Scott Sharp, and Dominic Dobson. That team looking very strong. Christian Danner kept that car in there all the way to 12th today. Nigel Mansell had his problems, fell out for the moment. He is not the champion of anything. First time in 2 years. Hiro Matsushita, Giovanni Lavage, Mario Andretti, then Michael, then Paul Tracy after leading in the early going and was such a strong candidate to win. Mauricio Gugelmin, Mike Groff, Marco Greco, Ari Lyondike, Alessandro Zampedri, Willie T. Ribbs comes home in 24th place. Unofficial results here. Robbie Gordon has his problems earlier. Mark Smith started so well and was looking powerful. Eddie Cheever, Jimmy Vasser, Frank Freon, who came in just at the last moment, and Claude Bourbonnais was the first car out of the race. So finishing that long lap and waving at all the fans here is our new champion. There's still more to happen here at Road America, so stick around with us. Should be interesting. We'll be back.